Hello and welcome to Reanimated, everybody. This is episode 343. This is Stuart. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me from COVID Central, now she's got it, H.A. Conrad.
Yep. It finally got me. Sad state of affairs.
I'm disappointed in you.
I was disappointed in me too. But
You were
really,
supposed to be the chosen one.
you should be disappointed in Bill.
Is that the source?
Yeah.
You stayed away for how many, like 2 weeks?
I stayed away, but I got it within like a day or two of coming back to the apartment. So it was probably just because it was steeped in the apartment or something. He insists that's not the case, but we all know it's him who gave it to me.
At this late stage of the pandemic, nobody knows. Stuff is everywhere.
I know. Have to just say thank you for vaccines, because I don't think that this would be great if I hadn't had those. So all good.
There you go.
But hopefully get through this pretty quickly. The fatigue has been the worst part of it, I think. I have the cough too. I don't know if you had that.
That was way back in February.
Yeah.
And taste and smell, you got that?
That hasn't done anything yet, but interestingly, Bill didn't. He kind of had a day where he lost it and then it came back, so I haven't necessarily had that experience yet.
Yeah, I think it was just a day for me also, and it was after I'd stopped testing positive. It was weird.
Weirdly, I have only tested positive on one day. I have tested negative since the first day I tested positive. Which is weird, right?
Very strange.
And people were like, "Oh, is that a false positive?" And I'm like, "No, because we did 3 tests, so it's pretty positive." So, 3 different types of tests. So, yeah. I don't know what the deal is, but there you are. Anyway, that's that. COVID finally came true.
Yep, there it is. Well, thank you for podcasting despite your ailment. We are here to talk about Tales of the Walking Dead, the show I was so hyped for, and I'm excited to talk about those first 2 episodes with you today. And then we have a little bit of news before we can get to that.
Yeah. But let's do it though, because I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, there's not a ton. Like, what I'm looking for when I kind of comb for news is news about new projects. Mostly, that's what I'm mostly interested in. And we've talked about some earlier this year that just haven't shown up again or haven't shown up yet. Unfortunately, the only upcoming project that I saw any mention of this week was something called Project Legion, which has a trailer on YouTube, which is stars a UFC fighter named Cowboy Cerrone, but from the trailer, it looks pretty weak sauce.
Yeah, we were just talking about it, but this is the best that they can pull right now to do their trailer. I think this does not bode well. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does not look good. And honestly, the effects are pretty terrible. And they can't even cover that up with very quick editing and quick cuts.
Yeah, it was a lot of just him on screen by himself too. And I'm this guy's like him not a veteran actor. Like, what are you doing? Why not give him some help? Jesus.
Yeah. I don't know that he can carry, and it's sort of like, it seems like a locked in kind of like solo, for the most part, solo thing with him. And I'm like, I don't know that this guy can carry it. So anyway, we'll see what happens there, but probably we will not be reviewing that one, I hope.
Yeah, that's probably not going to make it. There's also a lot of stories today anyway about the upcoming season 11 of The Walking Dead. Apparently Nicotero did a Greg Nicotero, that is. I feel like when I say his name, it sounds like I'm saying Nick Otero.
Yeah, I know.
But we all
know who it is.
We all know. So Greg Nicotero did an interview recently where he was explaining why they've introduced a different kind of zombie now at this late hour in the show. I mean, it's probably for a few reasons. One, to just like reinvigorate on their way out a little bit, and plus they're spinning off, and so why not shake it up a little bit? But also, it's to make up for the fact that they had a lot of inconsistencies when they were first doing the show.
Right. Or they felt like they could get away with it because they had those inconsistencies.
It's like paving a way for them to explain it.
Yeah.
But it's really just some revisionist stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so some of the things that we even mentioned in our very early podcast about The Walking Dead show where you see zombies doing weird stuff. And they mentioned it in the interview too, where Nicotero's like, yeah, there was a scene where there was a zombie trying to break into the department store with a rock on the window, and that was like a direct homage to the original zombie in Night of the Living Dead,
Right.
which conveniently we just re-released all of those encore episodes. I don't know if anybody got a chance to listen to those, but we talk about how the zombies are using tools in that film. And so they were doing that in The Walking Dead, which felt odd to us at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about the fact that we were like, wait, they can use tools. This is a little weird. And then that never happened again. But now that explains it, that they were kind of like trying to do some things with it. And then I guess decided, oh, wait, this doesn't fit in with what we're trying to do. And we're going to pretend that never happened until now.
And
So,
and now it does mean something. And I mean, at the end of that post-credit scene or whatever it was that they did where in France, where wasn't there like a super strength element? I thought there
yeah,
was a zombie
yeah,
coming through a metal door.
there was definitely a super strength element. So we'll
And
have to
that's
see for
not
that.
one of the features
No.
that they were highlighting or like accidentally showing in those early episodes. So that I think we are going to get some of it's like, CYA, and some of it is like, oh, and plus super strength.
Yeah.
So it'll be really, I don't know. I'm a little
I
skeptical,
mean,
but
I think it's just because they're French zombies and the French are very strong. So, I think we just have to accept that they're going to have superior zombies.
wow, what a generous interpretation.
More croissants mean more strength.
More strength. If that were true, I would be very strong.
Me too, because I really like a good croissant.
So revisionist CYA aside, uh, they are bringing in these new strains of zombies when the new season begins in October. And so we will be there to talk about those in great detail at that time. But Nicotero's already out there telling people why they did it.
Yep.
And I'm kind of glad they're being honest about it too, right?
Yeah.
They're not they're not trying to just sweep it under
Acting
the
like
rug.
yeah, and they're not acting like, oh, we this was our plan all along. I kind of like that they're honest about that. Oh, we were messed up at the beginning.
We
We're
didn't know
all
what we were doing.
right. So that's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
And it's also cool that it was because of Romero. Like
Right, right.
that was their DNA,
Yep.
especially for Nicotero. So in the DNA of Mythic Quest, here comes another article. It's actually not like related to Mythic Quest at all. Mythic Quest took this idea from World of Warcraft.
Right.
But World of Warcraft has some event coming up. I used to play this game. I haven't played it in so many years. I don't know what's going on. I've never participated in one of these, but they apparently have a server or maybe, universe wide zombie plague event happening to as a pre-patch to an upcoming Wrath of the Lich King classic event. So, and what this does is it basically players can get infected and they will turn into zombies, and then they have the ability to basically eat other players. Also, non-player characters like people like quest givers and shopkeepers and what can also be susceptible to this zombie plague that they're releasing into this online game, and then they will eat the human player characters, which I think is like fun and kind of a drag, because if you're in the game just like hang out with your friends and like go on raids or whatever it is that you're playing WoW for this many years after that game came out,
Right.
it can be maybe like not quite what you're expecting, but I guess they've done this before, and it's fairly infamous as far as these events go. And I have a feeling the Mythic Quest Blood Plague storyline came from this concept too, except in the show it like got away from the programmers and they like
Right.
lost control
Right.
of the Blood Plague. But I don't know if you have donated any brain cells to thinking about stuff like this, or if you think it's cool or what, AJ.
I mean, I think it's cool. This is not my world, as you know, so I leave it to you to sort of make the commentary on this. However, I do like Mythic Quest, and I think that's a fun show. So, it's all good. That's all I have to say about it.
That's all I have to say about that. But yeah, I
Um,
don't know. Like, if anybody plays WoW and has done one of these before, I'd love to hear more about it. So, give us a holler.
yeah. Uh,
Uh, yeah. So, WoW coming to WoW soon. Zombie Plague,
yeah.
actually, really soon. I think like next week or this weekend. And then
And
finally,
finally, Apparently they unearthed a 17th century grave and
In Poland.
in Poland and discovered that there were some anti-vampire things done to the corpse. It was a woman. They make a lot of conjecture about why. But this isn't something unusual during that time just because people were so afraid of people coming back. Often they were afraid of women coming back, but the precautions in this case were a sickle that was across the neck, and if the corpse moved, it could, I guess, behead the woman vampire.
Like, what's
And
funny about that is the assumption that when a vampire comes back, they immediately sit bolt upright
I know
so quickly that a sickle
it was
placed in front
gonna.
of them would cut their head off. I thought that was kind of hilarious.
So there was that, and then the other part, which is a little like weirder and probably harder to put in place, but she had a padlock on her toe, which would supposedly stop her from walking. And I guess these are things that they used to just do as a matter of course. The article goes into a lot of like detail about whether she was mentally ill, whether she was like accused of witchcraft, all this stuff that they're making conjectures on, honestly, on that I don't think that they really have any idea.
I mean, they
But
also say like women were susceptible to this sort of treatment because of things like, oh, not wanting to marry somebody,
right,
maybe having a miscarriage. Like,
there were all
just
sorts
be
of
grateful that we weren't born in 1650 or whenever this poor woman was alive and was
yeah,
maybe murdered and placed in a grave like this.
I often think about this when there's like time traveling things and when people are like super into all these kinds of like like, oh, if we went back in time, it would be a simpler time, a purer time. And I'm like, yeah, not necessarily a more fun time for women especially. So, and also, vaccines. So, that, are great. Um but I think that but it is kind of interesting when they find this sort of thing, sort of in the same vein when that used to have the bells by the graves in case people woke up or weren't actually dead.
Hmm.
So there's that. But anyway, kind of a cool article though, so we'll put it in the show notes. But without further ado, I am going to be a suspicious woman and start to talk to you about Tales of the Walking Dead.
Suspiciously, no doubt. uh so I don't know how high your hype was when we started this show.
It was pretty high. I was really excited for this, and I will say, hands down, this didn't disappoint, at least these two episodes. So I'm pretty excited to chat about this with you.
Man, me too. And yeah, there are some, these two episodes are very different, like night and day different, and they're different from other things that have come before them in The Walking Dead, other than the universe that it's in. And the second one we're going to talk about might not even feel like the universe, except that it's in Atlanta, like at the beginning of the apocalypse, right?
Well, and that's the thing about these is that what I think is kind of cool about it is that they are giving themselves a pretty broad palette, so to speak. They're not limited by a lot of the things that the shows are, and they were really going all the way out there. So I almost, and this is a little bit of what they were saying when they started teasing this, is that it was almost like a Twilight Zone ish thing, and that's definitely the vibe I got. I don't know, meaning there was a lot that they could do with this. There's a lot of like parameters that they bust through, specifically with this second episode, but they're
Yeah.
not limited by a lot of the storylines and things that they put in place with the OG Walking Dead. Um, so anyway, let's chat about it.
Yeah.
But
This
it's
first, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
all I was going to say is that this is the most fun in terms of like being part of this universe that I've seen in a while, and
Yeah,
it's great.
fully. And I think part of that fun is not just the script, but also the way it's been produced. And in this
Yep.
first episode, there are some musical treatments that just, and it's not like consistent, but what's consistent about it is how lighthearted I think the music is in this first episode. The first piece of music you hear is like a drumline theme tune for the show. And I think the credits were different for both of these episodes too, or the title credits, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um yeah, like, and this first one kind of opens with Terry Crews watching a football game on TV.
yep,
We know, we're primed to know that this is probably during the apocalypse, because he is immediately like reciting the commentary from the
yeah,
game before the commentator says what he's saying. And then not long after that, we see like, oh, he's got on a whiteboard, I think he's written 402 days since the world blew the game.
yep.
So he's like this crazy sports fan. He talks to his Doberman, and he talks to his TV.
And Gilligan is the name of the Doberman, and I was immediately like, oh, that's cute, Gilligan's Isle. So that was cute. But I think that it's the treatment. It feels like a little mini movie, which I also really like. And
What makes you feel like it's like a movie?
the editing is very it's a little bit of I was trying to think of the movie that this specifically reminds me of, but it was a little bit of um like, The Last Man in the World, right? So um like they kind of go through the routines immediately with the way the music was going and sort of his routine and day to day. It had a little bit of Shaun of the Dead going on, like the cuts and things, about not quite as quick cuts, but to get him into the narrative so you get the time passing and things like that. Also a little bit of Lost. Remember when they have the character who's just sort of like, after we've seen everybody else in this sort of bereft state, this character has all these resources and things like that, but he's all alone. At least Terry Crews has the dog. But that's the part that reminded me a little bit of the oh gosh, why can't I come up with it? This is a little bit of brain fog. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the Will Smith
Yeah,
movie?
yeah. I Am Legend. I Am
Omega. I
Legend.
was like Omega Man. Yeah. I Am Legend, right? And
Yeah.
what's interesting that you bring that up is that this episode is directed by Ron Underwood. Ron Underwood, while he did not direct Lost episodes, it looks like he is primarily a TV director. He
Mm-hmm.
did direct several episodes of Fear the Walking Dead. And before you boo, although you can still boo, he directed Cindy Hawkins, which is the
Yeah.
last Fear the Walking Dead episode where
And it
there
was a
was
good one.
bunker scenes. Yeah. And the bunker montages were interesting. There were some problems with that episode.
Mm.
Uh, mostly because there were problems with that episode. We talked about it not too long ago, so I'm not going to drag them back up. But
But I will also say, interestingly enough, he also directed Tremors.
the
Uh,
movie with Kevin Bacon,
yes. So he's got a thing about the bunker stuff. Because don't you remember there was like Doomsday Preppers in that? It was the Reba McEntire
yeah,
character.
yeah.
So he doesn't not have film sort of chops.
No, it's just that his film credits are quite short. It's like, I mean, not short,
Or
short. He did like 9 movies, but
mm,
yeah, I just think the Cindy Hawkins thing is so recent and in the universe, and featured wake up in a bunker montages, just like you have for Terry Crews here, the first part of the episode. And it's funny, he gets two, because one is pre-Gilligan and one is post-Gilligan, not pre-Gilligan, but during Gilligan, I guess. And then
yeah,
one
yeah,
is after Gilligan, sadly, very sadly, gets taken
yeah.
out.
Despite all of his precautions, so that's kind of sad.
Yeah, and the precaution, like when the little fence comes up,
Oh, so good.
that was pretty. Like, this guy clearly has thought about a lot of things, and they do a really good job in this episode of making Terry Crews's character, who's Joe, and they make him like likable and unlikable by turns, and it's not like, it doesn't give you whiplash, because I think you just see that he's a flawed person. He's
Well,
just
you
care.
do, but I like how they do it because it's like you don't immediately know that this is, yes, he's really prepared, but you also don't know what his life was like before. And then they kind of reveal that in a really cool way. Um, and it's the crisis of losing his little buddy Gilligan, that he starts to feel the loneliness a lot more and starts to feel really isolated and wants more. And so I did like the narrative, like I love the storytelling here, because so much of it is like there isn't a lot of dialogue other than him talking to the dog and talking to the screen, meaning the football game.
But once he starts reading those transcripts of his like old internet chats, they do
Yep.
actually introduce another voice.
Yep.
And I was half convinced it was Olivia Munn for part,
I
a
was
long part of the
too.
episode.
I was too. Like that was my immediate reaction, but then I was like, no, like she would have like picked up, like she would have picked up on certain things, like even if at some point if it was her. Um, but I actually loved the direction that they took with it, that it wasn't her.
No, me
So
too. That would have been too much for them to introduce her that way. Uh, and it's also kind of, and this comes up. This is how I was feeling later, also. But it's just, his dog dies, which is what pushes him to do this journey. But also, how insulting is that for whoever he's going to find?
right, right. My dog died, so now I want to find you. Yeah.
So I'm here now, and let's just, so it's kind of, it's better off that it works out the way it does. Obviously, the his motorcycle is really cool. This guy is prepared, and I like that. I like the detail that they don't go into it exhaustively, but they use their set, they use their props to demonstrate that Joe is very prepared, and I appreciated that. And that motorcycle with the electric motor is super cool. I don't know how realistic it is. The solar panels on it are teeny tiny, so I'm not sure that it could actually like power through 700 miles or whatever it is that he has to go drive from Ohio to Michigan, which is, and you know what, that's what's cool about that too. I complained about this a lot during The World Beyond, but they finally did not just skip the Midwest.
Oh,
They actually kind of, well, in one episode, but
right,
they traveled through the Midwest.
right.
It doesn't take very long for him to be introduced to Evie, the other character, in the title of this episode. I don't know that she ever introduced herself. Maybe she did, and I missed it. But I basically was just like, "What is Olivia Munn's character's name?" for a while. Eventually, he just starts calling her by her name. But I don't. Was there an introduction scene?
I don't know. I feel like there kind of was. But there's also a weird thing before where it's like she starts talking about her husband and he starts using the husband's name, which I don't think she said. So I don't know if we missed something, but anyway.
Uh huh.
Um, but in any case, I like their whole introduction is pretty good. Their interactions are have enough conflict, but there's positive stuff too.
She's a very positive person, and I think
Right,
that makes her quite likable, even though she has waylaid him, she's hijacking him, she's taking his stuff, she's being so nice about it all, right? She's not trying to
right,
kill him and take his stuff.
right,
She totally could have, because she has him in the net, right?
right,
But instead she's like, she'll bring him into the house, then she'll tie him up and say, oh, don't feel bad that I'm going to leave you here, because this place is awesome, it's got organic everything and lots of weed. uh so but like her positivity is part of the episode, part of the storyline also. He calls her naive later on, um right before she rips his heart out, uh and he quotes her back to herself by the end of the episode. And I thought that was like, what a journey that this episode even takes you on in 45 minutes. I think it's
yep.
just super powerful.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a little mini movie, which is, and they cover a lot of ground with it, and it's fun. And I especially like that, his whole dream of meeting this other prepper. I mean, I think we could have predicted that maybe the other prepper also has issues and things like that, and it did not disappoint. Um, but I really loved how all of that unfolded. And I also love how Evie ultimately rescues him, um, because she has been paying attention. And so she, just in even how whatever, you should be scared starts talking about, meaning her online handle. Um, you know, she seems incredibly sketchy, so anybody's antenna should be up, but
Did she though? I thought that they actually like they unfolded that very well. Like when he's walking down, first of all, the first thing you notice in her bunker is how much nicer it is than his,
oh yeah, but
with the
no, no,
lighting.
oh
But
yeah,
then as they reveal her, she's just so sweet. I mean, there's something wrong, like because we've watched TV before.
yeah.
There's something wrong, but it's not way out there. It
Well,
only
I think
starts to really reveal itself when she feeds him and does not have anything to eat herself, I think.
right, right. And I think with him, her ruse is more successful because she's kind of gotten it together when
Yeah.
when she's dealing with Evie, her shirt is incredibly dirty and weird, and like she looks disheveled, even though she's trying to put forth a very calm face.
Yeah.
And Evie, I don't think was fooled for a minute, even though she seems naive. She is quite, I think she is quite in tune and was in tune. And I really love the little reveal where, you know, she's like, you really shouldn't give an edible to somebody without telling them, you know, like that was like kind of cute. And they set that up before that that's
Yeah.
all she does is smoke and eat weed. She doesn't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Just kind of fun.
I also, kind of aside from this end scene that we're describing, the way that they showed their passage through Ohio and Michigan with like those postcard
Oh, it's cute.
backgrounds, I thought was nice. It's not a again, it's nothing like what you've seen in The Walking Dead. They just don't do that sort of like artistic
Nope.
welcome to Las Vegas sort of title screen. And there was I talked about the music earlier, and it started with that odd like drumline instrumental, and then there was a lot of Charlie Pride and the two
Mhm.
of them singing together. And there was some like, I'm trying to remember if this was the right episode or the next one, but there was like some synth 80s music, I think, at some point also.
Yeah, a little bit of Buddy Holly too, obviously as a key point with the you know other prepper. And it's even like how they use music in this way is not something other than some fight scenes. We haven't seen a lot of this in The Walking Dead, and
They used
especially
to do more
they
when
did.
Beth was alive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, did do
and
more.
and they'll do occasional montages to modern music,
But
usually
not like
those
this.
not quite as liberally. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the
Yeah.
other, and as you said, the postcard piece of it and that kind of editing feels very cinematic to me versus like a TV show. And a very different way, a very different style, which is good. I think that this was honestly just really a clever way to show their travel and progress. And
There's
actually,
yeah.
that part felt to me a little bit like Zombieland, you know, like when they're
Right.
going like on their little road trip, like
Yeah.
to show the passage of time and stuff. So I felt like they were clipping from a few different places, which is kind of fun.
But then they, even though we know we're in this universe and they have to fight zombies off at night though that one time, but they make that fun too because she's doing capoeira against zombies, which is and he's just like really impressed with her. And that's the night when they kind of stop mistrusting each other as much.
Yeah.
She lets him get out of his handcuffs for the first time. Um, then the like when they get their when the motorcycle gets stolen, it's still like it's not the kind of interactions we're used to in The Walking Dead,
No.
where the saviors would come and kill them and take their
Right.
stuff.
This
This
is
guy
like
leaves them a
the
baby
goat
sheep or a goat
or
or whatever
whatever.
it is, and then is like, thanks for the bike, and drives off. And he tries to shoot the guy, but he has no bullets. So the guy gets away, and they don't seem to really mind. By the end of the episode, they're not still talking about all the stuff they lost.
Mhm.
Like they're just like, yeah, moving on. Life's good. And so it's like a completely different vibe,
Yeah.
very positive and kind of uplifting. And yeah, I think this universe needs that for sure sometimes. So I thought that was kind of an interesting and intentional take by the showrunner.
Right. And there was like definitely some specific points where both of them and, they're echoing each other, but saying like there's still some nice things left, and they
Yeah.
specifically they're looking at sunrise or sunset. And um I think that that is definitely a departure from what we've been seeing on the OG.
Yeah.
Actually, not even, but a lot of the spin-offs. There was a lightheartedness to this that we have not seen, and a positivity to this that we have not seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
So,
And I
other
think
than in a few spare moments, but like,
some of that is Evie being an optimistic and positive person and like rubbing off on Joe, but
yep.
also Joe had that sort of joy in him while he was interacting with Gilligan at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, he did.
So you could tell that it was there. Who doesn't have any of that joy or joie de vivre is Sandra, I think is her
Yeah,
name,
yeah,
/ you should be scared. And like she's just full on serial killer. The
yep.
watch reveal I thought was a pretty cool way to show that
Agree.
she's not new to this and the
Yep.
story she was telling. And I just really like the way that unfolded. And you're cheering when Evie shows up with the sheep.
Yep.
having found a beautiful painting of herself at Steve's cabin. And you're just like, oh, Evie, that's good for you. Good for you, girl. And then she comes and saves Joe. And you're just like, yeah, man, this is just a lot of fun. And then they don't like just leave it there where they get out of the bunker and go off. And they also choose not to stay in the bunker, which I think was kind of an interesting choice. They're just like, no, that's not for us. Our future is outside and in the under this covered bridge where Joe is apparently just slaying bodies, and they kind of walk off and choose to be at the beginning of their story.
Yeah.
I think it was just just really nice zombie stuff.
I mean, yeah. And it really was kind of good. Like, I just think you're kind of see them flexing what they're doing in the types of storytelling and things like that with this. And so I really enjoyed this little vignette. I thought that the cast was great. I think that Terry Crews and Olivia Munn have really great chemistry together. So I thought that
That's
that was
true.
their interactions were really fun and great and believable. Um, and then I also thought I'm not sure who the actor is that played Sandra, but she did a great job at seeming incredibly normal and then turning very on a dime. So, oh, and so I thought that this was really just like I was so excited, and then I'm like, all right, next up. So,
Yeah.
um, and the other one couldn't be more of a departure. Like it's so totally different, which I think is the point of all these. Um, so
Well, I mean, we'll see. Some of them. I mean, the next one I think is Alpha
it is Alpha, so that's a
and
little bit
Lydia.
of a storyline we
So
know.
yeah, it feels like we're gonna get dipped right back into what we know. And I imagine unless they go, very artistically in a different direction for some reason, and which they could because Alpha was bananas, and so they could do a complete like storytelling like Faulkner would do, where you're put inside the perspective of a character who sees the world very very differently, and so we'll see. Anyway, I don't want to speculate because I don't know what it is, what's coming. But this next episode was directed by Michael Satrazemis, a well-known director from this series. I believe was he not the
Yeah.
showrunner for The World Beyond, or was that Matthew Negrete? I don't
Uh,
recall.
I don't recall, but anyway, he's very involved in this
He
whole.
has done a bunch of these episodes, but nothing quite like this because this is a time loop, or maybe not episode. This is your Groundhog Day, your
Oh,
Palm Springs.
it's definitely a Groundhog Day, I think. Both of them.
Or I mean, they try to throw some questions in there at the end about whether or not whether it's all in their heads or uh but yeah. It
Yeah,
so again with the casting,
yeah, amazing,
Jillian Bell and Parker Posey are just, I mean, Jillian
amazing.
Bell I've never seen do a role like this. Parker Posey is playing an asshole, and that's kind of, she is a little bit typecast there. She's Dr. Smith on the on oh god, what's that show called? Lost in
Lots.
Space.
She's on
Um,
a ton of stuff. She's amazing,
yeah,
and
but she's
Jillian
always
Bell,
kind of played this character in a way, right?
right? And Jillian Bell has been in. I mean, she's been in a bunch of stuff. I mean, I think people know her from Brittany Runs a Marathon. If you saw that, but
Workaholics is kind of where I got to know her.
yeah, but she also is in like Bridesmaids and like a few other things, like a lot of television shows. I think she was on Curb Your Enthusiasm and some other things. Like
And
she's all over
yeah,
the place. I mean,
part
so
of her signature is like giving you these very direct looks and then saying something a little bit wacky, right? And she does get to do some of that in this too, and she does just have like amazing comic timing and presence,
yeah.
but it's also a much more straight character than I think I'm used to seeing her play.
Yeah, and but the chemistry between her and Parker Posey is great. Their interactions are amazing.
And
The whole
the evolution of their how they interact with each other.
Right, it's amazing. And there's like moments when you're like, okay, I get it. And they both have fantastic delivery on this. And not just them, but like the support. It's their interactions with everybody else who doesn't know what's going on. So let's kind of get into it, which is like opens up sort of a normal, not normal, but like a very like typical sort of zombie apocalypse thing is happening. People don't know what's happening yet. And Parker Posey is this really annoying boss. and Jillian Bell is playing the secretary of Gina. Um, and
At
or
Circle of Trust insurance company, now
yeah,
forever
yeah,
and
yeah.
always.
Yeah. And it's taking these like very specific terms, and it's like it goes really quickly. It's like Blair, who's the Parker Posey character, is just incredibly awful in like almost a caricature type of way.
Yeah.
And all the sort of interactions between her and Gina are in that sort of a bit of over the top. Um, and so, you know, it evolves pretty quickly, where they have this weird interaction in a parking lot of the gas and sip or whatever it is, and they basically embark into this Groundhog Day like time loop, which is like, but it's so ridiculous because it's like Gina basically has a shotgun in her truck, blows up a tanker truck accidentally, and then they basically restart, and they restart every day like this, in a Groundhog Day way, in that both characters are working through specific things.
Yeah.
And it's really well done. It moves really quickly. And then they also like fast forward through time really quickly with like a montage of like very similar to Groundhog Day, how they like show a bunch of days where, they just keep blowing themselves up.
They
Um,
they almost always get blown up. I think
yeah,
there's one, maybe there's more than one, but it's almost always they get blown up with the truck. And this
right.
truck blows up very easily, which is what makes the final
Yeah,
joke quite
yeah,
funny also.
yeah,
But the
yes.
truck is constantly exploding.
Yep.
And there are these other characters in this narrative who none of whom are in on it, like you mentioned. But like there's Brian, Blair's fiance, there's this agent from the DHS, his kid Wendell, tanker
Mm-hmm.
truck driver, poor guy, he dies every time, just about, and like a few other folks at the gas station and in the office. And
Yep.
like you said, the way that they interact with them is pretty incredible. And it is very Groundhog Day in that Blair, like Bill Murray's character in the movie, is just not a good person at the beginning, and then like works through a lot of the and it's funny to think that if Groundhog Day had two characters instead of just him, how they might have sped up the learning process, I guess, because Gina's definitely giving Blair pointers on like how to be a better person. uh Gina also has her own stuff, and like I don't know, it's really interesting to hear her kind of admit to Blair, like, yeah, you've made me have to be like a little bit less of a doormat, and I keep dying a little bit less pissed off at myself, which I thought was a hilarious line. There's a lot of good lines in this show.
Yeah, and it's also, it is a little Palm Springs in that they actually have to eventually work together to get out of it, or wherever they eventually end up, which is, and then they have the question about whether this is actually something that's happening or if this is just a complete delusion. And they never actually close the loop on that. And basically just sort of say, okay, we'll just move forward and pretend like this delusion is happening. So it ends on a positive and funny note, where they are not totally unscathed, because they're both sort of semi damaged by the explosion that eventually
I
happens,
mean,
but
their
does not
hair
kill them.
is just
Yeah,
hilarious by the
yeah,
end. I
yeah.
also, one of my favorite parts about this episode is the way that when they come back to the beginning of the time loop, they're often still reacting to the last thing that happened to them. The first one, Parker Posey just breathes out a bunch of smoke from getting blown up in the truck,
Yep.
which I thought was really funny. Then there's also they scream, they're looking in weird directions, they're yelling, uh, and yeah, this episode is just nothing. It's like nothing we've seen before on this show. It is like things we've seen before in media, which and that makes it relatable, and you kind of have an idea of how it's going to end, I guess. It not like specifically what they're going to do, but you know that they're going to have to end up working together to break the time loop, because that's how time loops work, right, in
Right.
films.
Right. But this is the first time we've seen anything like this in The Walking Dead. And it tells you, I think it really shows you, like, okay, we're going to go to the farthest end of this sort of whatever we're doing with this show. And there are no real rules to it. So I think that's kind of fun. And it's also, I just think, um, I think the idea behind this one is a lot of fun too, and different. And so, Which, I think the next episode, which involves characters that we know, it sort of sets that up so that I guess I don't even know what to expect on the next one, but I just think that this was a really, really, I just enjoyed this thoroughly. It sounds like you did too.
Yeah, absolutely. The music in this one was not as noticeable for me, just as far as production's
No.
oversight goes. It was not as familiar to me or noticeable to me as in the Blair and Joe episode, not Blair and Joe, sorry, Evie and Joe episode. But there is some weird music in this. Like there's what sounds like Star Wars villain theme
Yeah.
in one scene right before they start, like they get on the floor outside the
Yep.
parking lot of the gas station and start fighting each other. There's so there are still making they are the showrunners are still making like very interesting production decisions in terms of how they're putting the show together. This episode also had a completely bananas title screen of like things exploding.
Right. And this
uh
one felt, and even just like the way comparing it to the last episode, just even the treatment and how people were styled and looked, like this felt very much more like sort of like, as I said, caricatures and very specific styling in terms of their outfits and their makeup, like over the top and exaggerated in more of a like, I don't want to say sitcom way, but in almost more of a like a 70s sitcom ish, or like a buddy cop movie or something. And the last one felt a lot more cinematic to me.
mhm.
Um, but
I mean,
so I
they were
kind of
the costuming for both of these, like the pair of people, and I guess maybe every episode is going to be made up of a
care.
pair of people. Um, so Evie was dressed kind of like a crunchy hippie farmer,
Yep.
and Joe was more tactical, but not 100% like a military fanboy. He had those kind of cool boots, those like rain boots. I don't know, but he did have a tactical vest on. Very different, like very opposite. And then in this one, you've got Blair in her weird astroturf vest and
Yep.
her
Earrings.
neck
Her earrings.
accessory that they make a big deal about, those crazy earrings, her purple coat, and Jillian is wearing not Jillian, sorry, Gina is wearing like a Billabong t-shirt over a
Yeah.
turtleneck under a blazer.
Yeah, it's a really weird outfit.
She has a strange outfit on. I think everybody else is dressed fairly normally, right? I mean, Brian's
Right.
wearing a sweater in Atlanta. I don't know when that's ever necessary, but yeah. So I think costuming is also something that I mean, in a time loop, you have to pay attention to it, right? Because how many of those outfits did they destroy?
I know, right? Um,
Maybe it wasn't that many. Like the explosions were never like, except for maybe the last one when they singed all of their hair and clothing. It was mostly CG and just kind of like a way to wipe the screen with flames.
true. But anyway, I have just to say, well done, and I'm looking forward to the next episodes. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty high bar. I'm
yep.
concerned. I'm a little bit concerned.
I'm
That
almost worried now that we're going back into a story we know we'll be disappointed, but we'll see. I'm still excited to watch it.
Yeah, Samantha Morton was awesome as Alpha. I don't know who they have playing her daughter. I don't think it's the actor
I don't think it
who
can
played
be.
teenager Lydia, because I think this is going back further in history.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I guess next time we're gonna do that episode and the one that comes after it. So it's actually just called D for the next episode.
Hmm.
Maybe it's not about two people, but I think it's about Alpha and Lydia and maybe some other people. And then
Yeah.
the one after that is called Amy and Amy slash Dr. Everett, which is the Anthony Edwards Poppy Lou
Ooh,
episode.
that'd be good.
Um, and that's actually, I mean, there's one more episode airing this weekend, and the final episode doesn't air until September 18th. So we almost caught up with this
Yeah.
entire show.
We almost got up.
Well, awesome stuff. I can't believe, in a way, I can't believe that the show is living up to the hype that I had in my head, because it was pretty high.
Yeah,
Um,
me too, and I'm really excited that it is. So
but
I'm
yeah,
excited.
props to Channing Powell, who was the
Yeah.
showrunner for this one, and to Ron Underwood, Michael Satrazemis for those for directing these episodes. Maya Goldsmith, Ben Sokolowski wrote the first one, and Kari Drake wrote the Blair Gina, and they were a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do more of them.
Agree. And so if you watch this and have some thoughts, we'd love to hear them. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or leave a note, reanimatedpodcast.com, or you can tweet at us at reanimatedpcast. There, I did it despite my foggy brain.
You did it. You really
and
did it. And
and
we're
hope
also on Podbean now. So if you use that app, you can listen to us through there. But good job. Good job, COVID-Conrad.
yay. Hopefully I'll be better by the next one. I'll be through it. I'll be through it.
You should be.
Um,
Otherwise you're in long COVID and we have other issues.
All right. Until next time. Ciao.
Toodles.